how does it ideas spread, how to stop bad ideas from spreading, why certain bad ideas spread, and they're warning us against assuming that things like religions are just bad, because whether or not something is pleasant to live your life in is different than whether or not it helps you survive and reproduce, and they've really honed in on that as well.
John, how is knowing how something's spread helping us to prevent something from being spread? I mean, you've already agreed, and I think JF shares the same sentiment that, and I'm sure that Kyle does, that we don't think that religion is a mind virus. We don't agree with Bogosian's view on that, and so if we can understand how things that are detrimental to society, dangerous views, conspiratorial views, or things that you would consider to be fringe religion type stuff, can be promulgated throughout society. But just knowing how that occurs, which to me is a little bit self-evident in some ways, I still don't see a really good mechanistic way to determine these things. But what's the advantage of knowing that, and how does that prevent those things from being transmitted?
You subscribe to the idea that knowledge is power. I mean, understanding how something works makes you can tweak it, right?
Oh, knowledge can be power, but it also can be knowledge. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Knowing something, knowing something's the case, it doesn't necessarily give you the tools to know how to change it or affect something.
Yeah. I understanding how
gravity.
ideas
I know about
spread.
Gravity. I can't change it.
Understanding how ideas spread, and specifically how they spread in different types of settings, is actually it's knowing how that works is important for marketing. It's important for all sorts of things. So the people that are funding this type of research are universities, of course, but also marketing groups. People want to learn how to manipulate us, and the best way to learn how to manipulate us is to learn how ideas spread. So this is the experiments are fairly new, but the things that they're describing are significant.
Yeah, no, I don't have fault with that. I don't disagree. There's marketing things, and obviously society is going to try to get their ideas out to the most amount of people in the most efficient means, and I don't have a problem with that. I just don't know how that relates to the memetics approach to use Dawkins types analogies to Darwinian mechanisms, because I think it's a useful fiction in some ways. I see corollaries. I don't have any disagreement with anything that you said as far as the terminology that Dawkins uses. I think he has a great approach to say, okay, these things are very similar. But that's all I take it for, is it's a metaphorical type of analogy. JF, what about you? Do you think that knowing these things somehow is relevant to try to change how things are disseminated throughout society? Or do you think it's just something that it's just useful to know, but because I don't see any Darwinistic really mechanisms for it. I just see it as a correlation between the memes and genes. But maybe I'm missing something. This is not a topic that I'm not familiar with. But
I mean, I have no desire to change the world. I'm a radical libertarian, and so I said the ideas will spread as much as they help you make babies, and the ideas that have spread up to now are those of religion because they help make babies, and atheists will eventually disappear from the surface of this planet. Now, on the whole thing that we've been discussing today, what I would recommend is people try in your head changing the word culture for milk, and to try to take everything that John said and replace culture with milk and memes with cream. What we have in milk in mammals is an intergenerational transmission of molecules. These molecules change. Sometimes a mother will give milk to her own children, but maybe some friend of the mother will help if she is driven toward it, if she cannot produce the milk herself. Or sometimes a baby will get adopted and will take its milk from another mother. But utility, if you've drank milk from your mother when you were young, you probably have molecules of fat that came from the boobs of your mother into your mouth, that came back from a line of ancestry that dated millions of years ago, because it's all mothers giving some fat to their child. And yes, the fat changes with time, and yes, some molecules of fat get away from the milk line, others enter the milk line. We could all see this as random mutation. And we could have an entire field with academics being paid full-time salaries, with departments studying the milketic transmission of fat molecule, and how these fat molecules, they gather into milkplex. But it would all be lost. It would all be useless, because we all know why milk is there. Milk is there because the baby needs fat and the mother has some. And the same is true of human culture. Human culture exists because the brain contains information, while the young people's brain, or the peoples who are not informed with that information, needs that information. To that extent, DNA has evolved machines that allows the transfer of milk, just like it has evolved the transfer of information between brains, and that is for DNA evolutionary purposes.
Okay, how would you use that with mimetics when you're talking about something along, not from the mother's milk, but from other carbon sources? When there's been multiple mutations that cause lactase persistence over the last 10,000 some odd years with humans. Prior to that, milk was not a viable carbon source because people couldn't digest it. They didn't have the enzyme stopped being produced after a few years. So now they have a mutation that probably they've had for a very long time. They start cultivating yaks and emus or whatever they're going to get milks from, and cows. And now they have the ability to digest it properly because of that mutation that was probably neutral before, but is now beneficial. So how would you relate that to mimetics then?
Well, I wouldn't relate it to mimetics, because I deny that memes evolve according to a Darwinian evolutionary framework. But I will say what happened here in that separation between lactose intolerance and lactose tolerance is that you had stomachs that were relatively willing to drink milk, but it was human milk. And you were in an environment where cows were producing lots of surplus milk. And so some genes have mutated toward lactose tolerance to tolerate the milk from the cow, and that's how it went. The genes here have simply evolved according to their own interest, which also means that there were probably in Europe populations of young child who died drinking cow milk, or who died because they couldn't drink the cow milk, or they would get sick from it. So yes, that is evolution in action, but it's not the evolution of milk. It's the evolution of DNA and milk drinking children.
John, do you want to address that?
Well, I think we should kind of wrap this up, because I feel like we're spinning tires here. But just the main point that I want to make is that the principles of Darwinian evolution are descent with modification plus selection. Those two things combined, you get adaptive evolution. This is Darwin's great discovery. It turns out there's nothing magical about biology. It's not that only biological things can evolve through this process. Anything where there is descent with modification plus selection, those things can evolve when parameters are right. If the modification is happening at a level that can be sustained. Culture, different ideas within a culture, as ideas are passed from person to person, from mind to mind, as they replicate from mind to mind, variation occurs. Variation occurs after they replicate, and the person has them in their mind, and they come in contact with other memes. Replications happen. Sometimes these are actively pursued. In the case of an inventor, Thomas Edison we think of him as inventing the light bulb. He actually just improved the light bulb. It was actually a cultural invention. People messing around with electricity noticed that stuff glows when you run electricity through it. But he actually he made like 3,000 versions of it to try and find one that would be marketable. That was a lot of work that he did. But anytime you have descent with modification acted upon by selection, you get through adaptive Darwinian evolution. And we have this in culture. Ideas really do spread from one head to another, and they really do change during that spreading process. And there really is a selection force that determines whether or not they're going to survive in the mindosphere or not, whether or not they're going to be able to compete with conflicting ideas in the same niche that they're currently inhabiting inside the mindosphere. This really does happen in exactly the same way as it happens in biology. And I'll just rest my case there and say, hopefully Kyle put up those links in the video description. Thank you for doing that. And people can read more on that. It's a really fascinating field of research right now. Like I said, it's now gone from a kind of armchair philosophy like biology was in Darwin's time to an actual experimented field of scientific research. And it's a lot of fascinating new things are coming out of that. So keep an eye on that. Cumulative cultural evolution is the thing to look up.
And Jeff, do you have any final closing thoughts?
All right. Well, my concluding thoughts are that this field that he's talking about is just sociology or cultural psychology of some kind. It is not something that will benefit from the insight from the theory of evolution. That's not dramatic. Human societies remain complex things that deserve to be studied. But in that study, we need to not give false keys to people, not give the impression that we found something that is not there. And people who believe in memes and who believe that culture is subject to the same kind of evolution as DNA are wrong. And John said there's nothing special about biological evolution. There is one thing special, and it's the toughest sell I've ever had as an educator to explain that to people. But the randomness of the mutation, believe it or not, is what leads to DNA evolving for itself. Because if there was someone else playing with your genes, if some god was injecting genetic modification and some god had decided that, okay, you're going to have an elbow and you're going to have an arm and you're going to have hands, we wouldn't say that you've evolved. We would say you were created. Well, cultural artifacts are created by thinking beings that are called human beings that are evolving for their own interest. And there's a difference between a creation and evolution. If they could put this in their own head, they would stop losing times. But we've already lost about 3 decades and entire departments of universities getting paid for researching crap. And it will continue, unfortunately, because people can't read this 140-page book.
I suggest you read the actual literature before making conclusions like that, but it's very obvious that you have not.
Well, there we go. This was interesting. I said this was a topic that a lot of people don't know a lot about. They don't hear a lot about it. And I just really want to clarify the people that are listening. Yeah, this is not about memes on Facebook. Okay, this is not like this is totally different. Okay, these are cultural of things that people believe that take up actual space in their head that can be transmitted to other people by just even any kind of communication. That's a completely different thing.
Guys, don't forget, as soon as we're getting ready to close out of here, as soon as we do, head over to that link that's in the live chat for Shannon's MS walk. Steve, I'm going to let you wrap it up. I know that you're doing something later on tonight, too, so if you can put that out there, too.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking with the philosopher Nicholas Lamar Sutter tonight. He's a philosopher, and we're also maybe be joined with Dr. Kenny Rhodes from Reasons to Believe. But we're going to be talking philo stuff tonight. If you're interested on my channel, come on over, Steve McRae, and that's going to be fun. That's going to be after Shannon finishes her fundraiser for MS, which actually I think is going on now.
Well, thank you guys both for joining us tonight. Everybody and thank you for joining us as well. We'll see you tomorrow with Isaac Arthur, where we'll be talking about the space object Oumuamua. And then don't forget on Tuesday, Lawrence Krauss, author of Something from Nothing, will be with us as well. All right. Good night.
All right.
Bye-bye.